He seemed so normal. John Wayne Gacy was a man of contradictions. To his suburban Chicago neighbors, he was the epitome of normalcy. He was a hardworking contractor. He was an active member of the Democratic Party. He even donned a clown costume for children's parties and charity events. Gacy, known affectionately as Pogo the Clown, brought smiles to their faces. He seemed like a pillar of the community. He was trusted. He was respected. Beneath the surface, a darkness festered. Gacy was hiding a terrifying secret, a truth so monstrous it seemed impossible. This seemingly ordinary man harbored a depraved alter ego. Behind the facade of the friendly neighbor and the cheerful clown, a predator lurked. He craved power and control. He was a sadist who reveled in the suffering of others. John Wayne Gacy was a serial killer. John Wayne Gacy's childhood was far from idyllic. It was marked by an abusive, alcoholic father who constantly belittled him. His father's cruelty instilled in him a deep-seated sense of inadequacy and insecurity. He desperately craved approval and attention. This yearning for validation would later manifest in disturbing ways. Gacy's troubled youth hinted at the darkness to come. He exhibited cruelty to animals, a common red flag in future predators. As Gacy grew older, his inner demons began to surface. He struggled with his sexuality, grappling with societal expectations and his own internalized homophobia. This internal conflict fueled a potent self-loathing. This self-loathing would eventually morph into a terrifying rage, directed outward at vulnerable young men who reminded him of his own perceived inadequacies. Gacy's victims were predominantly teenage boys and young men, often runaways or those on the fringes of society. He used a variety of tactics to lure them into his grasp. Sometimes he would offer them construction jobs, exploiting their economic vulnerability. Other times he would use his charm and charisma, promising them parties, drugs, or alcohol. He preyed on their innocence and their desire for acceptance. He presented himself as a friend, a mentor, a father figure. His methods were calculated and cold-blooded. Gacy would often restrain his victims with handcuffs, claiming it was part of a magic trick or a game. He would then torture, rape, and ultimately murder them, often by strangulation. He disposed of their bodies in a horrific fashion, burying most of them in a crawl space beneath his house. The stench of death permeated the air. The investigation into John Wayne Gacy began in December 1978, with the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Piest. Piest was last seen at Gacy's contracting company, where he had gone for a job interview. The teenager's family, sensing something was terribly wrong, contacted the police. Their instincts were right. Gacy quickly became a suspect. His criminal record, which included a previous conviction for sodomy of a minor, raised red flags. As the investigation progressed, the horrifying truth began to unravel. A search warrant executed at Gacy's home revealed a scene of unimaginable horror. The crawl space beneath the house was a mass grave. 29 bodies were exhumed from the property. The smell was overwhelming. 4 other victims, including Robert Piest, were found buried on Gacy's property or dumped in the nearby Des Plaines River. The nation was horrified. How could a seemingly ordinary man commit such unspeakable acts? John Wayne Gacy's trial began in February of 1980. The prosecution presented, well, a mountain of evidence against him. Witnesses testified to Gacy's predatory behavior, his disturbing proclivity for young men, and his chilling fascination with bondage and torture. Physical evidence, including handcuffs, ropes, and clothing found at the crime scenes, directly linked him to the murders. Gacy's defense team tried to portray him as insane, a victim of his own tortured mind, but the jury, they didn't buy it. After a 6-week trial, Gacy was found guilty of 33 counts of murder. He was sentenced to death. The sentence brought, well, a sense of closure, but it did little to ease the pain and suffering of the victims' families. The judge, in his sentencing statement, called Gacy evil and a diabolical individual. Gacy spent 14 years on death row at Menard Correctional Center in Illinois. He, continued to maintain his innocence, claiming that he was a victim of a conspiracy. During his time in prison, he painted self-portraits, often depicting himself as Pogo the Clown. These chilling images became, well, a macabre fascination for some and a source of outrage for others. He granted interviews and wrote letters, always trying to control the narrative, to paint himself as a victim. On May 10, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection. His final words were, "Kiss my ass." There was no remorse, no apology, no acknowledgement of the pain he had inflicted. His death was for many a relief, but it did not erase the horror of his crimes. The victims of John Wayne Gacy were, more than just names on an indictment. They were sons, brothers, friends. They were individuals with hopes, dreams, and futures stolen from them. Their lives were tragically cut short, leaving their families with a void that could never be filled. It is essential to remember them, to honor their memory, and to give them a voice. Their stories are a reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating impact of violence. They are a call to action, a plea for greater awareness, understanding, and compassion. They remind us that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places and that we must remain vigilant in protecting the vulnerable. The case of John Wayne Gacy sent shockwaves through America. It exposed the dark underbelly of suburbia, shattering the illusion of safety and security. It raised uncomfortable questions about how such a prolific killer could operate undetected for so long. How could a man who buried bodies beneath his own home escape suspicion for years? The answers are, complex and unsettling. They point to societal biases, law enforcement failures, and a culture of silence that allowed Gacy's crimes to continue unabated. His victims, many of whom came from disadvantaged backgrounds, were often overlooked and marginalized. Their disappearances, sadly, didn't garner the same attention as those from more affluent families. Even decades later, the legacy of John Wayne Gacy continues to haunt us. His case serves as a stark reminder of the capacity for evil that exists within humanity. It highlights the importance of vigilance, awareness, and early intervention in preventing future tragedies. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own society and the systems that, at times, fail to protect the most vulnerable among us. The victims of John Wayne Gacy may be gone, but they will never be forgotten. Their stories serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of violence and the importance of honoring their memory by working towards a safer, more just and compassionate world. They deserve justice. They deserve to be remembered. They deserve to have their stories told.